Hi, it's Nadira with Fresh Fire International Ministries. Welcome back for another Wisdom Wednesday Nugget. Have you ever wondered if David felt unseen? That's the question for this Wisdom Wednesday. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 1 through 13, it talks about David being anointed as the new king of Israel. And God directed the prophet Samuel to visit Jesse to anoint the king that God chose for himself. He was probably not who most people would have considered for being the next king, and probably not even the prophet Samuel's idea of who the next king should be. And that's just a good reminder for us. Don't let others' opinions get in the way of where God is trying to take you. It may not always make sense to our intellect, and it may, in fact, just seem crazy, but we have to ask ourselves, is God still God? And the answer is yes. So we can trust him when he's trying to lead us somewhere, or he's trying to put us in a certain position. I have a pastor that used to say, I don't have a better idea. And I try to lean on that when God is trying to, directing me to do something that just seems a little off. And so as we go on and continue to read, we read where the prophet Samuel was grieved over God's decision to remove Saul as king. I think of when God directed me to move from one state to the other. And man, that was like over 400 miles. And I remember asking God questions. God, are you sure about this? Like, my house is here, my job is here, my church is here, my son's doing well. And for those who don't know, I have a special needs son. And at that point, he began to strive, where before he kind of struggled. He struggled in school a lot. And I just remember asking God a whole lot of questions, and even questioning myself, girl, are you really hearing the Lord correctly? And so I said all of that to say that God can handle our questions. God can handle our feelings. God can handle our frustrations. And sometimes he will direct us to do things that may grieve us a little bit. But the important thing is just trust him and obey, because he will never set us up for failure, ever. And so I see, in reading about this, I see the prophet Samuel, his ability to, one, hear God, two, listen to God, and three, obey God. He was willing to move past his grief, move past his questions, and step out and really trust God to go forward to where God was leading him to anoint who would be this new king of Israel that God chose for himself. And so Samuel gets to that town and he looks at Eliab and he thinks, surely this must be the new king of Israel. Surely this must be the chosen one. And sometimes I think that we try to see the whole picture. We try to put all the puzzle pieces together. And I kind of feel like that's some of what the prophet Samuel was doing here. Okay, now it makes sense because this is him. This makes sense. But that won't always be the case. God will not always give us the whole picture. Sometimes we just gotta step out and trust. I know in my personal experience, there have been times that I've asked God, okay, Lord, what is this all about? And he's told me. And then there have been times that I've asked God and it was like, look, girl, you better just walk in faith and trust me. And sometimes we have to do that. And so Jesse's sons, 7 of them, were brought out, presented to the prophet Samuel. And for each one, the prophet Samuel, he says, no, this is not the chosen one. And so David was tending the sheep. He was still on assignment, unaware of what was about to happen. He was still on assignment. He may have known that the prophet Samuel was coming or not. He did not boycott his job of tending the sheep, but he still was doing what he was supposed to do at the time that he was supposed to do it while all of this was going on. And so in spite of this, I just wonder how David felt. Yes, he was doing what he was supposed to do when he was supposed to do it, but I wonder if he ever felt left out. I wonder if he ever felt unseen. I wonder if this whole situation ever made him feel inferior somehow. I wonder if he thought that maybe his father didn't think that he was good enough to be the next anointed as the next king of Israel. But regardless of what he may have felt, God saw him. And I also wonder, what if it was the other side of the coin? I wonder, what if David was apathetic and like, okay, y'all can have that king stuff. I'm good over here with my sheep. What if he didn't care about being king or had no desire to be king? Regardless, God saw him. So it's important not to place God in a box, limiting what he can do through us because of our own thoughts and beliefs, and it's also important not to place our potential in a box. Even if we believe that we are not capable of handling certain responsibilities, we can. If God called us to it, he's going to empower us to do it. And sometimes it's a matter of him putting us in a situation to grow us and stretch us and develop us. So we can't put him in a box. And so verse 12 describes David as ruddy. But God told Samuel, arise, anoint him, for this is he. So I encourage us all to arise to God's plans for us. Arise to the fact that you are more than you think you are. Arise to the fact that you are more than what others think you are, say about you, or try to limit you to be. How does a person go from an entry-level job to an executive position? God says so. What about a person who goes from living on welfare to earning six figures and living in a $700,000 home? God says so. How does a person go from barely earning a GED to earning a master's degree? God endowed that person and ordained it. How does a person go from barely being seen at work to sitting at a table with fellow directors? God says so. Nothing is impossible to God. If he is leading us to step out and step into a position that feels unfamiliar and scary, he is going to help us succeed with it. He is going to strengthen us as we step into it, and he is going to be there. God will never set us up for failure. So if we felt some of the things David may have felt, or thought some of the things David may have thought, we can stand on the promise that God will do exceedingly and abundantly above all we ask or think. You are smart enough. You are worthy. You are seen. You can do what looks impossible with God. And arise to that. And believe that when God tells you to do what looks impossible, you can, because in him you can. So thank you again for joining us. This was a little long, but thank you for sticking it out with me. And 40-day fast, we're on the down slope. So I pray that it has been a blessing to you. I pray that you have grown and God has moved in what you were fasting for and praying for. And please know that we love you and we are praying for you at Fresh Fire International Ministries. And we'll see you next time on Wisdom Wednesday Nugget. God bless you.